May I have a motion? Thank you, Peter. Seconded by Rick. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Agenda questions. Please limit your questions at this time to resolutions under new business on this agenda. As a matter of fairness, you are asked to limit your questions to no more than one and your remarks to no longer than 3 minutes. If you are here representing a group, please identify yourself, the group, and your position in the group. If you are here as an individual, please give us your name and address. This section of public participation will be limited to 15 minutes. No? Thank you. Dr. Schoen, Superintendent's report.
Yes, good evening, everyone. What we'd like to do this evening, we've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 months, and that's make a presentation on our consideration for a full-time kindergarten program. So if we could you just get the lights, or Christine? I want to thank our principals and assistant principals for being here this evening. Although a consideration for a kindergarten program, it absolutely affects all of our kids. One of the things that you have probably, you can click if you could, Ed, have seen in other districts that you're familiar with is there are a lot of full-day kindergarten programs out there. And they've been up and coming over the years, and the reason for that is pretty much obvious. Zimmerman will go into that shortly, but a lot of that has to do, obviously, with the educational value of keeping our students in all day long. Of the 68 districts in Bergen County that offer kindergarten programs, 54 of them offer full day, so approximately 84% of the Bergen County districts do. One of the things that I sent out initially to the board, and a word that made me focus in on this quote from NEA back in 2006, the president of the NEA, was, children have the opportunity to learn from each other, and the very best opportunity we can give them is to do that in an educational environment. It truly is a joy for children to learn at that age level, and it is a magical time for them. Early education, as you know, is significantly important to preparing our students for success. Stronger academic skills, certainly improved socialization, and a better educational foundation. What we've done is we've put together our great team to focus in on the areas of their expertise. Ms. Zimmerman in curriculum and instruction, Ms. Donahue in personnel, because that changes when you go from a part-time to a full-time program. And of course, Mr. Deptula with the financial component associated with that. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to Ms. Zimmerman to do her piece. Thank you.
Okay, so a full day kindergarten, presently we have a half a day, so do the math, full day equals more time for learning. When I was a building principal here in Mahwah, and previously before that, I talked to parents of incoming kindergartners every year about what they could expect when their child was in kindergarten. And one of the things we talked about was what the kindergarten curriculum looks like. And I would always say to parents year after year that kindergarten today looks like what it looked like when you were in first grade. The expectations are higher. You know, every year, greater and greater levels are expected of our kids, and yet we're still in a half-day kindergarten. And then parents would get kind of a worried look on their faces, and I'd tell them, but don't worry. I'm going to look right at Ellen Mahoney when I say this. Our teachers, our kindergarten teachers, are experts at developmentally appropriate practice. So they balance the two things, these higher expectations with what's appropriate, what they know through their training and experience is appropriate ways for your child to learn. That being said, it was always a challenge for them. Ellen would say to me every year, Chris, any news about full-day kindergarten? And I would say, not yet, Ellen, not yet. So here we are talking about it today. So I'm excited to have Ellen in the audience too. So here's why. Times and expectations have changed. Many of our kids are in full-time preschool with academic environments. Parents are coming and saying to our teachers and to me or other principals, my kids already reading, you know, doing math, you know, what's kindergarten like? And kindergarten is no longer most children's first time exposure. You may not know kindergarten is not mandatory in New Jersey, but yet, you know, well, everybody has it, but it's not their first time exposure to education anymore. That's an old time thing. So children need time. They need time to be academically challenged, to meet these higher standards, the New Jersey core curriculum content standards, the Common Core state standards, and on the horizon for all of our students starting in 3rd grade and going into 11th grade will be the new PARC tests that start not this year but the following year. So they need time for learning. In 2011, the state came out with a kindergarten implementation guideline report, and it talked about the things that good kindergarten programs need to have. They need to incorporate learning centers into the classroom environment. They need to have developmentally appropriate scheduling. They need to integrate curriculum across the content areas. And Selma Freiberg, who's a famous early childhood person, said, play is the work of the child. So they need to have play-based activities within the content areas. And they need to facilitate long-term projects. You can only do that with time. And kindergarten is not 1st grade. It's a unique time in a child's life, so we need to recognize that and give them time to meet these higher challenges within the developmentally appropriate framework. And so in order to do that, kindergarten teachers and administrators need to keep learning about what developmentally appropriate practice is and be able to help our students meet these higher levels of learning expectations. So what do we need to do in Mahwah to make a full-day kindergarten happen in terms of our curriculum? Our English language arts curriculum for kindergarten, we need to increase the number of units that we have. We follow the Teachers College Columbia Reading and Writing Project model of a reading and writing curriculum. So we need to increase the number of units to match what their current recommendations are. We need increased time to explore these topics in English language arts, reading and writing, word study. So we'll need to do some summer curriculum writing with our staff developer, Christine Magada, and we'll need materials for these new classes. In math, we've worked with a consortium from our county and outside our county, other districts that also do everyday math, some of them with full-day kindergarten. So we feel confident that the number of units that we have in math are good, but increased time will give us the ability to increase the number of lessons that we do, the depth of the lessons. Children will have time to explore because they need to get their hands on manipulative materials and really understand what those math concepts are at the early grades. Time to explore the topics, again, summer curriculum writing for those increased lessons, and materials for any new classes that we have. In science and social studies, the last couple of years we've updated curriculum in these areas, and what we always say is we need time to explore the topics more in depth, and a full-day kindergarten would give us that time. In Spanish, our kindergarten curriculum currently matches the same number of units that the 1st grade has, so we feel no changes are needed there. And in special areas as well, no curricular changes. It's a short period. They will just have increased time to explore all the topics that they're currently studying. And that's it from me. Up to Janet Donahue, our Assistant Superintendent.
Forgive me if I'm tied to this because I can't see the screen from here. But what I'm giving you here is an overview of our current staffing for the kindergarten program by school and a projected staffing. So let's look at what we have currently. Betsy Ross and GW have the same configuration. They have 3 half-day sections of kindergarten. And that means we have a full-time teacher in each building teaching 2 sections and a .5 teacher, a half-time teacher teaching the 3rd section. At Lenape, we have 5 half-day sections, and that's 2 full-time staff members and 1 .5 teacher. So of course, if we move to a full-day program, if you look to the right on the projected side, we would have 3 full-day sections with 3 full-time teachers. At Betsy Ross, the same at GW, and at Lenape, 5 full-time teachers for 5 full-time sections. At the bottom, I've listed here that the part-time position would then be gone, and we would create a full-time position for each of those increases for the half. Okay, and then overall, right now we have 4 full-time teachers in kindergarten and 3 half-time teachers. And if we go with this program, we would have 11 full-time kindergarten teachers. In addition to classroom teachers, all kindergarten students, like every other student in our elementary school, has specials in the areas of art, library, music, and physical education. Currently in the half-day program, a special for a kindergarten class is 20 minutes. If we go to full-time, the students would have a 40-minute special period, like first graders, second graders, third graders, and so on. So we are, in effect, doubling the special time as well. At the elementary level, the students get 2 periods of PE a week. They get 1 period of art, 1 of library, 1 of music. So we would be moving special time from 100 minutes per week to 200. These periods also serve as the teacher's prep period, when they can plan their lessons, confer with their colleagues, make phone calls to parents, and it's part of the contractual agreement that they would have this time, prep periods. Okay. I'm really glad the principals and assistant principals are here right now, because I really want to thank them for what they do every single year in sharing special teachers. And that includes the middle school and the high school sharing with elementary specials. We move teachers all over this district as expeditiously as we can. And the principals get together to work on master schedules that eliminate as much travel time as possible. So I will tell you at the end what they have been doing for the last couple of weeks. But when we look at the increases in special time, the potential increase in staffing is listed here. A .2 teacher is in effect for a special 1 full day. So we would, at the utmost, need .2 in each of the areas except for PE, where we would need .4. But the principals and assistant principals have been meeting for the last month to look at every special teacher's schedule, travel time, time on task in each of the buildings. And they have done an incredible effort of eliminating the travel time, or if teachers are shared among buildings, they've worked on their schedules to keep the person, for example, in Betsy Ross for a whole day, rather than going to Betsy Ross and GW in the same day, because we have to allow sufficient time for safe travel. So this is the possible impact, but they have already eliminated some of this. And we are going to continue to work on that as the year goes on. And Brian Miller and John Pascal have been helping in that as well. And I just want to thank them all for putting in the time and the know-how to look at scheduling to minimize costs. The other potential impact would be with paraprofessionals. We believe that students with IEPs, with special needs, who are in a half-day program, may possibly need more support if they're going to be in a full-day program. And certainly those who have a 2.5-hour para may need a full-day para or 2 part-time paras. So there is a potential for increase there. And the other time is during lunch and recess. Currently, our kindergartners do not eat with us or go out on the playground at recess time. And as you all know, if you've ever had a 5-year-old, they need lots of help opening their Tupperware and opening up their little packages and cutting up their little sandwiches. So we do believe that we will need some additional paraprofessional support to help our children get through safely and quickly and happily through lunch and recess. So that's it for the staffing for me, and Ed will deal with the cost of the staffing.
This is really cost and space. So taking one school at a time, currently Betsy Ross School has 236 students. We have 3 classes of kindergarten, but they're half-time, so they only use up 2 rooms. Okay. So currently there are 2 kindergarten classes, 9 elementary classes. If we're going to run full-day kindergarten, we're going to need 3 full-time rooms for kindergarten. So at Betsy Ross, there is a room allocated for the art, music, speech, OT, PT. So we are not, and you can kind of go through the rest of this. The KEP is an extended kindergarten program that's run by the YMCA. So students who go to the AM session, some of them at the expense of the parent, will stay in the KEP program afternoon and vice versa. So that room, it's safe to say, will not be used by KEP if we have a full-day kindergarten. So we would anticipate right there, we would not have a problem absorbing this. And without going into some of the other, where it's nice to have rooms available for other activities. There's a slight loss of revenue, I'll mention in terms of the rent that we get on this. If you assume that we're losing all 3 rooms, which by the way, we don't always have KEP in all 3 buildings, so it just so happens, we're looking in the neighborhood of $25,000 or $26,000, so we're not talking substantial money. All the buildings, I will put in a caveat, probably not a problem at Lenape, that we will probably have to do upgrades to the bathrooms. That's a subject that'll be easier to deal with if the board gives a go-ahead. It'll depend which rooms we end up using, which ones we think are more important. My big concern there is not so much the expense of the upgrade as it is monitoring the projects when you see everything else that's going to be going on during the summer. So we may have to spread that out over 2 or 3 years. In an ideal world, we do it all at once, but we'll evaluate that once we make it past tonight. George Washington School, we currently have 197. Again, there are 3 half-time kindergarten classes, so we have 2 kindergartens, 7 elementary classes. There's also at GW a self-contained kindergarten and a self-contained first grade. Those are self-contained special ed classes. So we're going to need 1 additional room for kindergarten. And again, if you go over to the right there, without touching anything else, we have KEP, but you can see we also have other rooms there at GW that are available. GW, in the original section, has 8 bathrooms. So that produces some interesting things as we keep going forward. And again, if we decide to use them, there could be possible upgrades spread out over time. The other possible expense would be if we're going to have 3 full-time kindergartens there, I think we may want to consider an upgrade to the playground area at GW. But we can again come back to that at a later point. Lenape, the newest school, currently has 473 students. As was already pointed out, there are 5 half-time kindergarten classes, so if we go up to 5 full-time, we're going to go from 3 rooms allocated for kindergarten to 5 rooms. Now, right now, there's, at Lenape, you have rooms allocated again for KEP, art, music, OT, all these other things. In addition, you have a large media area, a computer lab upstairs, as well as a large work area in the back of the multimedia room. I wish I had the map up here, but if you picture when Lenape got built, the thought was having 5 rooms in a row, as you're facing the building on the left side that have bathrooms, would be more than sufficient. And of course, that's always over time, it may or may not be. So right now, we have a whole wing with 5 pretty much up to code bathrooms, because they were only built a dozen years ago. There's not a requirement that you have a bathroom in the room. It's nice to have. The requirement, though, would be that there be a bathroom within sight of the room, and then an adult to accompany kids. The goal would be to not get into that situation, but again, it's an option which we just want to make sure everyone's aware of. Okay, so then, before we get to the money, as we've played around, if you go back to, again, Betsy Ross has 4 classrooms right in the middle of the building. They have bathrooms. No problem taking 3 of them, having them. GW, we have a plethora of bathrooms. Lenape, we don't have them. We do have bathrooms in the hall, but we only have the 5 rooms with bathrooms in it. So as we looked at this, and anybody else can jump in, one of the things we would suggest, if we're going to go ahead with this full-day kindergarten program, would be to take a look at the existing location of some of the programs we have. So one of the suggestions that we have would be to relocate the pre-kindergarten and the preschool handicap classes over to GW. That would mean that the 5 kindergarten classes at Lenape could just take that wing up. It would in essence be a kindergarten wing. We wouldn't have to worry about having aides walk the kids to the bathroom, which would be legal, but we're just trying to avoid doing that. It just takes time up. It's another thing to be monitoring. So we would be able to take advantage of the existing classrooms with bathrooms. We want to keep, if you're not familiar, the Title I program with the preschool handicap program. We want them in the same building because they share services, they share resources, there's mainstream activities, so it presents a lot of pluses educationally. So we would not want to split up those 2 programs. Aside, just mentioning on this would be that in the future, we would not schedule say a self-contained kindergarten or a self-contained 1st, 2nd, or 3rd grade at GW because we're going to be using rooms up there. We would keep them at Betsy Ross or Lenape, depending on the situation and the year. Anybody want, good enough for the moment? Okay. So basically, and again, this is just repeating at top what's already been said, we're going to be looking at 5.5 additional staff members. We're going to look at what becomes 7 benefit packages, and those who are familiar with these things know that that's not an insignificant amount of money. And those familiar with me know that that 487.5 is probably a little high. But again, not knowing who we're hiring, not knowing whether they're single or they have kids and all family and all that, we'll start there for the time being. We have 3 more months to develop a budget for 2014-15, and we can hone that in. The specials, again, as Janet already pointed out, is going to be a number we're going to have to watch, because if we can incorporate current staff, then we don't have to add special time. IEP services, that's a tough one. We kind of did some round numbers looking, and so for the moment we're talking 20,000. The startup, as we buy furniture, new book sets, again, I'm not going to say we've nailed this down because we're only at this preliminary stage, but we're looking at 75 to 100,000. I mean, I think give or take, that's probably a decent number. Last but not least, because this is Mahwah, we have to think transportation. We don't see this from a financial point of view impacting the district. We may save some money in one area and then spend it over here, but we don't see, when you look at the whole transportation area, where we're going to have to sit back and say, oh wow, we're picking up by another 2 bus routes or something like that. And I think that's it.
We're going to come sit down, Chuck, so we can do some questions.
Sure.
Do you have them? That sound good?
Okay.
Firstly, I'd like to say thank you as you make your way back, especially to our principals, our assistant principals that are out there, our staff. The work that went into this is obviously immense. Brian, you in that outfit.
I appreciate that, Trish. Thank you.
It is very festive.
For a good cause.
I'm glad. Can I donate one piece of these things? But no, seriously, I really would like to thank you very, very much. The team here that put this all together, and I always talk and speak of us as a team. I really sincerely appreciate the work that's gone into this. So thank you very, very much. On to the questions. Chuck, did you have a question?
Just a quick one on the startup cost. Would that include the refits on some of the bathrooms?
No, the bathrooms would probably run between, again, this is 25 to 35,000 to do the right way. That may vary from room. And again, this is where we have to sit down and really now look at the rooms once we make it past tonight. And again, just to reiterate, some of the rooms could be left the way they are for next year. Some of the rooms will have to be changed, and some will be in the middle where we can apply for, a waiver for a year, as long as, again, we're covering things. So, that's something we can handle as we move through this.
Suzanne?
We actually just mentioned bus course, wouldn't we be saving because now we don't have that 12 o'clock noon run?
That's where I think that's where the savings would come in. We may have a little bit more expenses in terms of moving the Title I preschool. So again, the thought was at a minimum, and again, those of you who know me, we're talking a wash, but we could save a few bucks in the process, yes.
Ed, any opportunity for grant money to get us going this way, or doing some of the retrofits?
Not now. I mean, there's nothing available that I know of.
Any other questions from,
I think this is a huge positive for Mahwah. It really is.
It is our recommendation, Madam President, to move forward with the full-day kindergarten
I look forward to
with the
seeing.
board, as long as we have your approval to do so as part of our budget process.
Yeah.
So that is the next step, right? We plug it in as an input into the preliminary discussions from a budget standpoint.
We continue our discussions that Ed had referred to moving forward, so we just have a better understanding. Right now, we gave you high guesstimates in regard to some things on purpose, but if we have your approval, it will allow us the opportunity to move forward and do that.
We don't need a vote, but is there a consensus
Is
that
there
you'd like to see us continue this process?
Show of hands, move it ahead.
Peter?
I think it's long overdue.
Yes.
The Common Core curriculum premise is a full-day kindergarten. Our teachers have been trying to get that full-day kindergarten material into a half-day. It's a win-win for our kids because they now have the time for additional activities for each of these units. So I see no reason why we should not proceed.
I think also the number of times sitting in instructional that we have sat and the state has said, okay, now we want this taught in kindergarten, now you're going to put this in kindergarten, and the number of times we will look at each other and say, how on earth do we tell a teacher who's there for 2.5 hours to put another thing into their day? This at least, Ellen, that's not because you're sitting there, I swear. It just suddenly dawned on me that Chris said you were here. But it's always been a concern. This way, if it opens up, my question is, what happens to our first grade curriculum? Do we start to impact that as we go forward with this?
The Common Core is very clear. It's a staircase of
Yeah.
benchmarks. So we're looking to make sure that we hit the kindergarten benchmarks deeply and solidly. So, and the first grade benchmarks, the first grade standards are the first grade standards. They have not changed. Our curriculum has already been adapted to make sure that we ensure that the students will reach those Common Core benchmarks in kindergarten. It's a challenge
And this
now.
will give.
But this will give them that time
Yeah.
that they need to.
I think it's beyond a challenge
Yeah.
right now. I think this will be a wonderful thing for both the students and the teachers alike. It really will. I thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Good to move forward, thank you.
I would like
Thank
you to.
everyone.
Yes.
Thank you.
The only other piece that I have is to wish everyone a very happy holiday season, and some well-deserved time off for our faculty and staff and our administrators who go above and beyond every day. So I do want to say thank you and happy holidays to all. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Donahue?
I have no report tonight beyond this.
I do.
Oh,
We received information last week. If you remember back in beginning of the summer, the state magically found in the neighborhood of $500 million for ROD grants, regular operating district grants. We haven't had them in several years, so the projects we've been doing over the last few years have been funded totally by the taxpayers of Mahwah, not by the state. But they did open up a window. They made it clear that they wanted anything submitted to be a Tier 1, a high priority item. It was also kind of clear, not ever put in writing, that don't get carried away, because we'd like to make sure we can spread some of the wealth out. So back at the end of August, you approved submitting 5 grants, and I'm happy to report that all 5 have been approved. So very quickly, this includes the switchgear project that's over at the high school over there. We anticipate that that would cost about $934,000. If it does, the state would pick up approximately $373,000 of that, 40%. That project, again, will not be done until the summer of 2015. We would anticipate that at the end of next summer, we would go out to bid. We need to have every assurance that everything that needs to be ordered and done can be ordered in such a way that school can start again in September of 2015. So, because that'll be a major shutdown of the high school for that work. The other project is the Joyce Kilmer, the 2 older wings to replace all of the univents. Budget is $660,000. The state would pick up $264,000 of that. We are hopeful to do that this summer. That would kind of right now be our goal. And again, as I referred to earlier, this is where you can have a lot going on, and it's very difficult to keep track of everything going on. So we have to take into account in terms of the bathrooms, how much manpower and how many buildings can we have things going on. But we would like to see this done because, again, the high school switching project is really going to have a substantial effect on the summer rec program. So we would like to have it where we can get this done this year. So just so you know, it's the goal, can't guarantee that. The 3 that we're comfortable getting done this year would be Betsy Ross, George Washington, and Ramapo Ridge boiler replacements. And if you put those 3 projects together, you come up with, they're about $332,000 each. So round numbers, you're up around $1 million, and we're looking at approximately $400,000 being picked up by the state. Those 3 projects, we've done those before, very doable. We're not worried about getting them done in a timely fashion. So as we move through this, I'll keep you more posted, and of course you're going to have to be doing resolutions at a future date, but we'll keep you posted in terms of what we think we actually can get done this summer. So round numbers, we're looking at $2.6 million worth of projects, the state picking up a little over $1 million of that. Again, we're pleased with the results. We're pleased that we have all 5 projects approved and authorized.
The switchgear, are we okay pushing it out to 2015?
Yeah, I think
I know that all the
mentioned
costs
last
are
time.
an issue.
Well, I mentioned last, we had a company come in to do a test before we decided to do this.
Okay.
And again, from their perspective, there is no reason to think that this can't last another, in essence, 2 years. I mean,
okay.
When we ran, that was a concern we had. But again, as I said, Rockland was not saying this stuff is going to go tomorrow.
Right.
What they were saying is, if it goes and school's in session, whatever you thought it was going to cost you, add a lot to that, because you're going to have to go nuts. You're going to have to get emergency generators in. You're not going to be in a position to plan the project. So they said you really have to now come up with a schedule. We were ready to do it, but then when the state opened up the funding, it's hard to turn several $100,000 down unless you have a really good health safety reason, which we did not have after the engineering firm came in.
That's great.
Okay.
That's $1 million to the
Yeah,
good.
congratulations.
Good work.
Trish, may I for a
Yes.
second? If our principals and assistant principals would like to leave and go home and spend time with families and dinner, please do so. We'll fill you in on
Thank you again, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So polite, so.
I don't really have a report tonight, except again to wish everybody, as Lauren did, a very happy holiday. I hope everybody gets some time off to be with their family and friends and eat lots of good food and get lots of good presents. Instructional committee, we had a meeting on Tuesday morning, that was yesterday. You have the notes in front of you right now. I will, if you allow me to just briefly go over them. Dennis Fair presented the journalism course at the high school. He would like to change the name of the course to Journalism, a Study in Print Media, to differentiate it from our digital media courses that we are currently teaching. The rewrite of that curriculum will be about 7.5 hours. It will be on next month's agenda. We are considering, or the high school is considering at this point, a new course, Digital News Broadcasting. I'm going to allow the internal discussions to continue on this. It is very exciting. But we have suggested that if they want it in the 2014-15 options, we have to have it on an agenda in January, as we require that. Financial literacy is being rewritten, has been rewritten, I'm sorry, with the updated standards. Financial literacy is required for graduation. This is one course, however, that we suggested for 11th and 12th graders. We're looking to open it up to some 10th graders with approval from the high school staff. Some of the 10th graders that would benefit from this and would take it in 10th grade would then free up time to take their higher level math classes going forward in 11th and 12th grades. So it frees up that elective or that AP option for them. Gifted and talented art is becoming way, way, way more rigorous than I've ever remembered it. We have rewritten the curriculum. The students will be putting together a portfolio. The portfolio will then be, I think they call it an art juried, actually, which will allow them to opt out of Art 1 in the high school. Now, Art 1 is a requirement in the high school for any other art class that the students want to take. So this will give those artistic students an option of skipping that basic level and moving on to those, and again, getting up into the 11th and 12th grades, taking those higher level AP classes. Typing programs. 2 have been chosen. The library media specialists, teachers, principals, compared 3 programs which we had talked about previously. They've chosen 2. K-5 have chosen typing instructor, web for kids. They're all web-based. The students will be able to get to use them in school. We don't know how yet. However, they will also be able to access them at home, so they can practice their keyboarding skills. 612 have chosen typingweb.com. There are 2 options on this. One is free. It comes with advertisements. We've checked a little bit because those of you that have been on the board a long time remember our ad conversations and whether or not you can subject people to advertising. If we take the one without advertisements, it's $7.99 a student, but it's a one-time cost. So we would basically pay $7, $8 for every student in the high school. As the graduating class leaves us, that would open that subscription up to an incoming freshman. So it kind of is a one-time cost. These will be, and the choice will be made, checking through policy, on the January 8th agenda. We want to get really moving on this really fast so the kids can start using this. I just have to share a funny comment that was made at our meeting the other day. Common Core has said that 3rd graders should type 1 page in a sitting. 4th graders should type 2 pages in a sitting. And 5th graders should be capable of typing 3 pages in a sitting. They have not defined the length of the page, nor the length of the sitting. So, our students need, we really need to move on it. So, our students will be ready when we field test the park and using Common Core standards. And that is my report. I understand we have a facilities report, Peter?
We do. We met on December 10th, the morning of December 10th, and the snow was falling. And we discussed in detail the potential positioning of the building. There were 2 options. We have decided on option number 2, mainly because of safety issues, handicap access, and costs. We will meet again on Friday to further discuss the positioning and some of the internal things that internal activities we're going to be having. For example, it was put out that we should have stanchions for volleyball available for the kids, and that would be drilling holes and putting permanent fixtures in there. So we also asked if the board approves this to continue, what are the targeted construction dates? And the architect said August 2014 would break ground, and December 2015 the project completion. Again, everything depends on when we say yes, go ahead. Still, to take the kinks out of it, discussing what we need or don't need, and what are the ramifications of various configurations. For example, heating and cooling. Some places have huge fans in the ceiling. We're still talking about that. That's all I have. Our next meeting is going to be, as I said, Friday, this Friday. We'll go on from there.
Thank you. Any questions? Policy, Doug.
Yeah, policy tonight. I handed out the notes, the report, so everyone should have a copy. There's 4 regulations that will be on the January agenda. And 4 are 8420, all 4 of them are mandatory, 3 of them are revised. Last one that I'll review is new. So the first one has to do with emergency non-fire evacuation. Policy now includes the requirement that each school conducts a minimum of 2 non-fire evacuation drills per year. 8420.2, regulation now includes procedures to follow before and after a bomb threat is received, work with the law enforcement, crisis management team members, and student dismissal procedures. 8420.7, revision includes increased communications with the law enforcement, mandates the local law enforcement control the scene upon arrival, ignore the bells or alarms, close and lock the doors, windows from inside the classroom. This has to do with the lockdown procedures. And then 8420, active shooter, new regulation is based on a critical incident response procedure for school administrators, facility staff, developed by the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security.
I think it's important to note, Doug, if I may, that the
Yeah.
procedures that we're putting into place in the regulations, we already do. We're just in the process of updating our regulations to them, but those non-evacuation drills and the active shooter drills and bomb threat procedures and active communication with law enforcement is something that we already do, so it's not new to us, it's just going into our regulation.
I will say it just stinks seeing it in writing.
It's hard to read.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Doug.
You are.
Suzanne, Public Relations?
Yeah, I gave a verbal report on it.
Oh, this is that one. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
this is just the written.
Follow up the written.
I'm sorry, thank you. Were there any other committee meetings on the list? Board member comments, additional comments, Peter?
Just one thing you'll see in your New Jersey School Board notes. It just came out of the Senate committee, S1227, which is a regulation that would allow districts to have 5-year contracts with their staff. If you remember, Ramsey 2 years ago got in trouble because they had a 4-year contract, and the administrative judge says you can't do that. You're going to allow a maximum of 3. It's out of committee in Senate. It will be voted on relatively soon, as soon as it comes out of committee with the Assembly, which has a similar bill. New Jersey School Board initially was not in favor of it because, one, it puts future boards beholding to the current board. In other words, if you make a decision now, some board 4 years from now will say, why did they do that? Why do we have to do this? But they went along with it and said, okay, we'll support it. They were able to take and change an amendment. One of the amendments in this new bill was the Neptune decision, which when you're in negotiations with your, whomever you're in negotiations with, teachers or other staff, no increments as long as you're in negotiations, the increments do not increase as the years go on. They were going to change that and allow it to happen, but the New Jersey School Board put pressure on them and said, look, we'll support this bill if you take out that and keep the Neptune decision as it is, so that's a good thing. That's all I have.
Thank you. Old business. I'm sorry, were there any other comments? I'm looking at that side. Old business. We'd like to move it. 14A, moved by Peter, second by John Dolan. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. De Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Salverini?
Yes.
Mr. Wojciechowicz?
Yes.
Mrs. Curry?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Shaw.
Yes. I'd like to move all of 15, 15A through I, moved by Peter. Second by Rick. There are minor changes in here on field trips.
One addition.
Was there, I'm sorry, I did
One
miss.
addition, that's it.
Oh, yeah, to the field trips.
That's right.
Okay. Questions or comments, 15A through I? Roll call, please.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Dolan?
Yes, abstain on 15F.
Mrs. Salverini?
Yes.
Mr. Wojciechowicz?
Yes.
Mrs. Curry?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Shaw.
Yes. I would like to move 16A through G, moved by Peter. Second by Rick, thank you.
There's one
One.
addition, a letter of resignation that I received today. And since the clock starts ticking today, I added it.
Thank you.
Okay?
Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
16A through G, Mr. De Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Dolan?
Yes.
Mrs.
Yes.
Salverini? Mr. Wojciechowicz?
Yes.
Mrs. Curry?
Yes.
Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes.
And Mrs. Shaw.
Yes. Item 17, this section of public participation will be limited to 15 minutes.
Evelyn Slockbauer, 43 Thunderhead Place. On the notes to the basic financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2013, it refers to 18 million being left on the long-range facilities plan balance. On the June 30th, 2012, same report, it refers to 14 million being left in the long-range facilities plan. I'd like to know what the difference of 4.8 million is.
That's prepared by the auditor, so I really wouldn't know in terms of what the difference was between the two, and I'd have to ask him.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to just mention is if any of you were able to see Rachel's challenge and watch the video, there was some type of device that was thrown and it lit up a fire in the cafeteria at the school. The fire sprinklers came on and extinguished that fire. Our auditorium has 635 flammable seats, curtains, all wood stage. Improvements have been made over the last 3 years to the auditorium, so the school has recognized that improvements needed to be made, and I don't think it was fiscally responsible making improvements without considering putting in fire sprinklers for the safety of our children.
Dr. Shaw?
May I,
Could you
please?
please
Mrs. Slockbauer,
end
thank
this?
you for your comments. I'm just leading this way so that I can see and speak with you. One of the things that you had brought up at some prior meetings was inviting Mr. Montre to come. So what I did do on December 6th, so it was a couple of days after our meeting, is request a meeting with Mr. Montre as well as the mayor. Because what I believed was important was hearing it straight from the horse's mouth. Because I know that you had spent some time
Yes.
meeting with him, and I did the same thing. And because I came on board 6 months ago, I didn't have the opportunity 20 years ago that you had referred to in regard to promises that the board had made in code compliance. I am a superintendent and I am an educational leader, but when it comes to code compliance, I need to get that from the experts.
Yes.
So I went to Mr. Montre. We had a very nice conversation. He is a very knowledgeable, respected, and respectful person who has spent time with our board, a great deal of time over the years. Mr. Montre, as you probably know, follows the Uniform Construction Code. There are subcodes within that big, huge document that address specifically requirements of new additions and moving forward. The statement that you had made at one of our meetings was there was a promise that the board had made 20 years ago that Mr. Montre had referred to. And he did, and the board did 20 years ago make a statement that any new additions or new facilities would be brought up to code compliance. So if we do a new addition, if we're doing some type of facility, that must have a fire sprinkler within it. I asked him specifically if our auditorium was out of code compliance, because there was some discussion in the questioning that it was, and I thought it was important to hear it again straight from him. What he said to me was this. He said, if an area is not renovated or a new building is not built, I have no power or right, either morally or legally, to mandate that you apply the present code. The Board of Education has lived up to their commitment every single time in regard to a conversation I had with board representatives 20 years ago about sprinkler systems. There are no life safety issues for students in any of your schools. So I appreciated the time that we had together. I did want to make a public statement about that. Your opinion in regard to what our priorities are and where we're putting sprinkler systems is absolutely your right, and a decision that the Facilities Committee can certainly make in moving forward. And if I may, there were also some comments that you made at the last meeting, perhaps you or other people that were here, talking about the safety of our students. And there was a specific comment made in regard to unsafe facilities that we have. And I spent some time thinking about it, and I think it's worthy of note publicly, because not only do we have our parents' greatest accomplishment and their students, we have faculty and administrators and adults, so it's important that what we have in our buildings is safe. Please know that we have, since the beginning of time, well before I got here and well after I leave, fire safety drills. It's interesting that these regulations are being brought up. It used to be, call a couple fire drills a month. Get the kids out of the building, make some announced, make some unannounced. Block some of those doors in case there's a problem. We continue to do that. We've added our active shooter drills, we've added bomb threats, we've added lockdown procedures. I'm sure you've probably heard of these from kids coming home. We announce some of those and we don't. It can be scary somewhat, but you've read the news, we've all seen it enough to know that these things do happen. So I think it's important to say publicly that we train our staff, and they do a beautiful job protecting our students, as do our administrators, and that we take security and the safety of our students very seriously. We could argue over what's more important than something else. We could have a private conversation. If I were to sit down with another board member, they may have a different perspective. So I do appreciate what you're saying, but I do think it's important to know that we do follow code. We are code compliant. I did hear it from our building inspector, and I appreciated his time. So I wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Allison Cucci. I live at 28 Divine Drive. I am the parent of an incoming kindergartner in September, so I would like to say to the staff and to the Board of Ed, thank you for investigating the hope and dream of having a full-day kindergarten. I too am an educator. I'm a primary teacher, and I realize the stress that's put on children and teachers, especially in our K-2 facilities. And now with the core curriculum content standards coming and expectation, I was sharing a story before that I have an older child who's currently in 2nd grade, and he's at Lenape, so my daughter will go to Lenape as well. And I just say, how's kindergarten? Oh, it's great, great year. But he'd say, but I can see the playground, but I can never play on it. and hearing that from a principal, I have to say, as a teacher, obviously we work so hard all day. What do you remember from school? Of course, they're going to say recess. But the whole point is, I think kids will grow and learn better in a full-day program because that 15 minutes of playtime gives everybody a breath for them to be able to do things so much more deeply in the rest of the day. And I think what Mrs. Zimmerman was saying, it's not that we're looking to make the curriculum harder, we want to make it deeper for understanding. And I think allowing these 5- and 6-year-olds that opportunity is going to make an amazing change for them, not only in kindergarten, but as they move forward. So, they've always been so developmentally appropriate in Mahwah, and I've always applauded that as an educator and as a parent now. So I think now, with that coming together, I'm really thrilled to see that the board has supported not only what the administrators and the teachers know, but I think as a parent as well, I'm really thrilled to see this happen for my child, so thank you.
Thank you very much for the comments, I sincerely appreciate them. Yes?
Christine Moranti for Ivy League, and just so you know, although I'm the president of Betsy Ross HSO, I'm here as a parent, I'm not here representing the HSO, but I wanted to echo Mrs. Calucci's comments and just say thank you to everybody for the effort and the investigation into full-day kindergarten. I will miss it again. Many more children to take advantage of that, but I want to ask a question about it. Actually, first an observation at the American Education Week, National Education Week, Roger had us, invited us to come in. And one thing I noticed so much, especially with Mrs. Johnson, is the opportunity she gives the children to sit and digest. And it's not, I always thought every time I observed, like, oh my gosh, why didn't you call yet? Why didn't she? They're raising their hands. There's a patience and there's a pace, and that's a quality, and that's an intimacy in education that if we keep adding more and more in, that drops out just by the function of time. So your efforts, our efforts at putting full-day kindergarten in, it will help preserve that, and that will just help their maturity, and it will maintain and allow them to really be citizens as well as just receiving all this academic knowledge. So that's like not being an educator, but being a mom and a coach and a yoga teacher, that's what I see there. From a mom's point of view, you're taking our little 5-year-olds and we're putting them in full day, all day. And I know I paid for it in preschool for all those years, but is there a consideration about like 3 full day, 2 half day, or 3 half day, 2 full day, or is the opportunity to go straight to 5 full days? That's my question.
We talked about that internally, you know, the group that made the presentation tonight. The majority, and the board has more specifics as far as those districts that have either an extended day or a modified kindergarten program.
1 p.m. or 2 p.m.?
They do a 1 p.m., 2 p.m., they do 3 full days. You know, what we thought was we waited a long time in order for this to happen, and if students can maintain that for the full day, then they can do it for 5 days a week. So we really didn't go into different options. We thought if we're going to do it, we're going to do it to the best of our ability and offer the best program we can over 5 days. So we did discuss it, and that's a good question. If I can just tag on to what you just said, one of the reasons that we can move forward with confidence on this recommendation to the board is because of our kindergarten staff. You know, it's one thing to say we want to put in a new program and not have the people in place that can deliver it. And from the onset, and I can only speak from what I've heard, Ms. Donahue and Ms. Zimmerman have spoken so highly about our kindergarten staff and their motivation to do this. And you know as well as I do, you can make people do things, but if they're real interested in doing it, wow, you're going to have a super program. So I'm so happy to hear, and that wait time is very difficult for a teacher. Just give kids some time. I remember it well, but it is a gift, and it is what kids need because they don't think as quickly. Remember, developmentally appropriate is because they're development. So thank you. Peter.
To further allay your fears, I have one grandchild in Westwood Kindergarten, full day, and a set of twins, boys, no less, in Dover, actually Mine Hill. And they love it. They're thriving all day. And we thought, so my daughter said the same thing, they're exhausted because they take naps, but they love it. They come out of school running, they get home,
Right.
but they make it through the school. It's not that bad.
And the comment about the playground is true for so many kids. You hear it.
It is true.
I should have said, this is our objective.
I actually got to play on that playground. Yes.
Different topic, Christopher. I wanted to thank the board. It's probably a long overdue thank you, but I want to thank you for some of the improvements at Betsy Ross. The curtains in the all-purpose room, the locks on all of the doors, the brand new doors, the internal locks on the classrooms. I know some of it was emotional decisions after Newtown tragedy last year, and some of it was just bringing things with the police department, having made inspections. I wanted to thank you for all of that. I was so happy to hear about the grants because I read about the state's decision and awards in the paper, and I'm so hopeful I would come tonight and hear about our boiler, so thank you for that as well. If you just keep us updated, not to be greedy, but if you just keep us updated on the AC and the APR, that would be awesome.
We'll get that in. Thank you. Well, yet again, I'd like to wish everybody a very happy holiday. May I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Doug, second.